Have you ever felt that strange fear when hours slip away and suddenly the day is gone? Imagine if time appeared before you, not as a gift, but as a terrifying shadow. This is the story of a boy who learned too late, or maybe just in time. The sun was high, yet his room was still dark. Curtains shut, air heavy, silence broken only by the ticking of a clock. He lay on his bed, eyes half closed, body heavy with laziness. Books gathered dust on a desk. Assignments remained untouched. He whispered to himself, "I have time. I could do it later." The clock ticked louder. Each second pressed against his ears like dripping water in an empty cave. His chest felt tight, but he ignored it. The air grew warmer. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch. A sudden knock echoed at the door. Sharp, unexpected. His heart jumped, but he did not move. Again, the knock came, harder this time, rattling the wooden frame. He forced himself up, sweat already sliding down his temple. The room tilted slightly, as if the air itself had shifted. His hand trembled as he reached for the handle. When the door creaked open, the hallway was empty. Only silence. Only the echo of the ticking clock, now louder than ever. He turned back and froze. On his bed sat a shadow, shapeless, but heavy, with eyes that glowed faintly like burning coals. The shadow whispered, low and clear, "You wasted your time." His body stiffened, his throat dry, unable to speak. The room shrank around him. The walls pressed closer, the ticking of the clock now hammering inside his skull. The shadow leaned forward, its face almost touching his. Its voice grew sharper. "Every hour you waste, I grow stronger. Every day you wait, I take more." His knees weakened, breath shallow, heart racing as if it wanted to escape his chest. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. The shadow pointed at the clock. The hand spun wildly, faster and faster, the glass trembling as if about to shatter. His ears rang, his vision blurred. Still, he stood frozen, trapped inside his own fear. The spinning clock struck with a thunderous crack. Glass shattered, sharp fragments flying across the room. He covered his face, but none of the shards touched him. They froze in midair, suspended like deadly stars around his trembling body. The shadow rose from the bed, growing taller, filling the room with its presence. Its eyes burned brighter, casting a dim red glow across the walls. The dust on the desk lifted and swirled as if pulled by unseen winds. Papers flapped violently. Books fell open with torn pages fluttering like wings. The boy gasped, his voice trapped in his throat. The shadow leaned closer and whispered again, slower this time. "Time never waits." He felt the words crawl into his ears, heavy and cold, sinking deep into his bones. The floor beneath him cracked like brittle ice. He stumbled back, but the shadow followed, silent, unstoppable. The shards of glass began to move, circling him like a cage. He looked for the door, but the hallway was gone. In its place stretched an endless tunnel of darkness, walls dripping with pale light like melting wax. His chest tightened further, his breaths shallow, desperate. He shouted, finally breaking the silence, "Leave me!" But his own voice echoed back, multiplied, mocking, louder each time. "Leave me, leave me, leave me." The sound crashed through his head, filling him with dread. He dropped to his knees, hands pressed against his ears. Yet the echo remained, vibrating inside his skull. The shadow knelt before him, its coal-like eyes unblinking. It reached out a hand, long and crooked fingers stretching toward his face. The boy's skin prickled, his heart hammered so violently it hurt. The shadow's touch was cold, colder than death, pressing against his cheek. And then the shadow hissed, "This is the cost of your wasted hours. This is the weight of your stolen days." His vision darkened, his head spun. He felt himself sinking, as if the floor had turned to water, pulling him down. He thrashed, gasping for air, his arms reaching upward. But only the shadow's glowing eyes stared back at him from above. The darkness swallowed him whole. His chest burned. He could not breathe. He could not scream. And yet, the ticking returned. Slow, steady, tick, tock, tick, tock. He opened his eyes. He was back in his bed. The room was still. The clock on the wall was normal, hands moving slowly, calmly. His body shook with sweat, heart still racing, every muscle trembling. For a moment, he thought it was only a dream. But then he saw the desk. On the wooden surface, carved deep into the wood, were the words, "Time never waits." His breath caught when he touched the carved words. The grooves were deep, jagged, still warm as if freshly burned into the wood. He pulled his hand back quickly, his fingers trembling. The letters seemed to pulse, faintly glowing in the dim light of the room. He staggered away from the desk, his back pressing against the wall. Every sound in the room grew sharper. The creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the slow turning of the clock hands. The words echoed in his mind again and again. Time never waits. He shut his eyes tightly, hoping the sound would fade. But when he opened them, the shadow was there once more. Not sitting, not towering, standing calmly by the window, watching. Its eyes glowed, but softer now, almost patient. The boy froze, his body refusing to move. The shadow lifted its hand and pointed outside. Through the window, the world had changed. The streets were no longer filled with children laughing. The sun was no longer bright. Instead, the sky was gray, heavy, thick with clouds that seemed to hang lower than ever. Buildings looked broken, abandoned, covered in creeping vines. Time outside had moved forward without him. He pressed his forehead against the glass, heart pounding as he stared. He saw children he once played with, but they were no longer children. They were grown, tall, strong, faces filled with determination. One carried books and walked with confidence. Another worked in a shop, hands moving quickly, skillfully. Another stood proudly in uniform, respected by all. They passed by each other, busy with their lives, their dreams unfolding. None of them looked at him. None of them remembered him. He shouted their names, banging on the window, but not a single head turned. His voice carried no weight. It was as if he was invisible. Tears burned in his eyes as he watched. Then he caught his reflection in the glass. Not a boy, not the same face he knew, but a pale, tired figure with hollow eyes and hunched shoulders, older, weaker, wasted. The shock froze him. The shadow whispered behind him. While they lived, you waited. While they grew, you delayed. While they built, you wasted. His legs shook violently. He stumbled backward, his breath ragged, eyes wide with terror. The reflection in the glass leaned closer, its lips moving though he made no sound. But he understood the words. I wasted my life. The world outside grew darker. The people vanished. The streets dissolved into dust. The glass cracked, spiderweb lines spreading across the window. The boy screamed, but the sound never left his throat. The window shattered inward, exploding into a storm of glass shards. He raised his arms to protect himself, but instead of cutting him, the shards pierced into his body, sinking like cold knives of light. Each shard carried an image. Missed chances, lost hours, abandoned dreams. His chest heaved with pain, each shard burning like fire. The shadow loomed over him once more, taller than ever, its voice shaking the walls. This is the dead of time. The boy collapsed, clutching his chest, gasping as the fire spread through his veins. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the shadow reaching down, wrapping its long fingers around the ticking clock. The ticking grew louder, faster, unbearable. Tick, 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 until everything went silent, and the darkness swallowed him again. Silence. He floated in endless blackness. No sound, no ground, no air, just the heavy weight of nothing pressing against him. His arms stretched forward, reaching for something, anything, but his hands touched only emptiness. The fire in his chest still burned, though faint, flickering like dying embers. Then, faintly, he heard again. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound echoed all around him, bouncing through the void. He turned his head, searching desperately. Far ahead, in the darkness, a small light appeared. It flickered, weak at first, then grew brighter, glowing like a flame trapped inside glass. He staggered toward it, his body heavy, his breath ragged. With each step, the ticking grew faster. The light expanded, and he saw it clearly. It was a giant clock, suspended in the void, its hands turning violently, spinning faster and faster until they blurred into a circle. He shielded his eyes, but he could not look away. Suddenly, the spinning stopped. The hands froze at 12. The clock face cracked down the middle with a thunderous sound. And from the fracture poured visions, bright, sharp, merciless. He saw himself lying in bed, wasting day after day. He saw mornings where he promised himself, tomorrow I will begin. He saw evenings where he whispered, I still have time. He saw doors closing, one after another, as opportunities vanished like smoke in the wind. He saw people moving forward, working, growing, living, while he stood frozen. The visions wrapped around him, circling like chains. He screamed, clawing at them, but they tightened, burning into his skin. From the shadows above, a voice thundered. This is your life wasted. This is the harvest of your laziness. He felt at his knees, his strength fading. Tears streamed down his face, his chest aching as if crushed by invisible hands. I do not want this, he cried, his voice hoarse. The void trembled. The chains loosened slightly, though they did not break. The voice rumbled again, quieter now, closer, whispering in his ear. Then prove it. Rise before it is too late. The giant clock cracked further, shards of glowing glass raining down around him. Each shard carried another vision. One showed him finishing his studies, holding his head high. Another showed him working hard, respected, proud. Another showed him helping others, guiding them, living with purpose. The vision stabbed into the ground, glowing brightly, burning the darkness away. For the first time, Warmth touched his skin. Hope flickered inside his chest, small but real. His legs shook as he forced himself to stand. The chain still clung to him, heavy and sharp. But now he pulled against them. Every step forward ripped the chains deeper into his flesh, sending waves of pain through him. But he did not stop. He reached for one of the glowing shards stuck in the ground. When his hand closed around it, the pain burned like fire, but he refused to let go. The shard transformed in his grip, turning into a key of pure light. The giant clock above him trembled. The frozen hands twitched. The voice whispered once more, "Time waits for no one. Unlock your future, or remain lost forever." His chest heaved, sweat dripping from his brow. With all his strength, he raised the key toward the cracked clock. The moment the key touched the surface, a blinding light erupted, swallowing the darkness. His body felt weightless, pulled upward, through the fire, through the pain, through the endless black void. He gasped, and his eyes snapped open. He was back in his bed. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains. Birds chirped outside. The air was fresh, clean, alive. His chest rose and fell rapidly, sweat covering his skin, but the fire inside him was gone. Instead, something new filled him. An urgency, sharp and undeniable. His eyes turned to the desk. The words carved into the wood were still there. But now, beneath them, new letters glowed faintly, as if freshly carved. "Do not waste another second." He stared at the glowing words on the desk. His breath slowed, steady now, but his body trembled as if it still remembered the weight of chains. The sunlight in the room felt sharper, brighter, no longer hidden by the curtains. For the first time, he pulled the curtains wide open. The world outside was alive. Children rushed to school with books in their arms. Vendors called out in the street, their voices carrying the rhythm of the morning. Even the leaves of the trees seemed to shimmer with a kind of urgency. He placed his hand on the carved message once more. The grooves were deep, undeniable, impossible to erase. His fingers pressed harder until his knuckles turned white. He whispered to himself, voice low but steady, "No more waiting. No more wasted hours." The clock on the wall ticked softly, but now the sound no longer felt heavy. It felt like a drumbeat, steady, calling him forward. He pulled his books from the desk, brushing off the dust. The smell of paper and ink rose into the air, sharp and real. He opened a notebook, the blank pages staring at him like an unspoken challenge. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. But he wrote, one word, then another, then a sentence. Each mark of ink felt like a victory. The pages filled slowly but surely. His heart pounded, but this time with energy, not fear. Every tick of the clock reminded him, not of loss, but of the time still in his grasp. The shadow was gone, or so he thought. In the corner of the room, where the sunlight did not fully reach, something shifted. Faint, almost unseen, but he felt it. A coldness brushing his skin. He turned his head quickly. The corner was empty. Still, his chest tightened. A whisper curled in his ear, soft, almost kind. "Do not slow down. I'm always watching." He froze, pen still in hand, eyes scanning the room. Nothing. Only the clock, ticking steadily. He looked back at the desk. The second line of words glowed brighter. "Do not waste another second." He swallowed hard, a shiver crawling down his spine. Was it a warning or a promise? He did not know, but his hand pressed harder on the pen, and he kept writing. Outside, the sunlight grew stronger, flooding the room with warmth. Inside, he felt the weight of time pressing against him. Not crushing, not suffocating, but guiding. He knew now that the shadow was real, and he knew it would return if he stopped. The thought shook him, but also fueled him. Every page he filled was a battle won. Every task completed was a chain broken. Every second used with purpose was a step away from the darkness. And yet, deep within his mind, he felt it, the shadow waiting, silent, patient, ready to grow again if he faltered. The boy lifted his eyes from the page and looked at the clock. The hands moved slowly, calmly, but with unshakable certainty. He whispered to himself once more, louder this time, "I will not waste my life. The clock ticked in reply. Steady. Unstoppable. Alive. Days turned into weeks. The boy no longer slept until the sun was high. He rose with the morning light, each hour carefully guarded, each task completed with focus. His books, once covered in dust, now filled with notes, ideas, and effort. His room, once dark and heavy, glowed with the brightness of purpose. Every tick of the clock still echoed in his ears, but now it sounded different. Not a threat, not a curse, but a reminder. He had learned that time was not an enemy. It was a gift that vanished if left unused, a gift that punished the lazy but rewarded the determined. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight faded through his window, he paused. He set his pen down, closed his books, and breathed deeply. The room was quiet, calm, alive. He looked at the carved words on the desk. The glow had faded, but the message remained. Time never waits. Do not waste another second. He traced the letters with his fingers, and for the first time, he smiled. The shadow had not returned. Perhaps it never would. Or perhaps it still waited somewhere in the corners of his mind. But he no longer feared it, because now he understood. The shadow only grew when he wasted his life, and he had chosen to live. The clock ticked gently, steady as ever. Tick, tock, tick, tock. This time, the sound did not scare him. It carried him forward. It carried him into tomorrow, where every second mattered, where every moment was his to shape. And with that, his story began again. A story not of laziness, but of time valued, time lived, time redeemed.